How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Day 3 of training camp. A lot of good stuff to take away. Some really standout performances, some not so good performances from the offense, specifically Daniel Jones really struggled today. Holding onto the football a little bit too long. The offense didn't really incorporate as much pressure, or rather mobility and kind of motion into the system. But the defense really stood out. Wink Martindale was sending the house, using that aggressive mentality and style he tends to deploy on the defensive side. So really interesting to see there. Kayvon Thibodeau got Andrew Thomas's number a couple times, which is really good for Kayvon to have some good success. Now the Pats will be coming on next week, so we'll see a little bit more physicality. Aaron Robinson got himself in trouble. Brian Dable was ripping into him because he accidentally, I guess not accidentally, he actually tackled David Sills without pads on. Now, you're not supposed to do that. He also knocked into Wan'Dale Robinson, and that kind of, spurred a little bit of a moment because you're not supposed to hit the receivers right now. It's supposed to be more non-contact stuff. So some main takeaways definitely to discuss, some heat-related issues, and then one standout player who's really having a phenomenal camp so far. But Anthony, before we dive into the good stuff, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Had to make the quick switch to the Giants hat. It's not hockey season. Can't be wearing the Rangers hat on Fireside Giants, but I'm super excited to dive into day 3 of training camp. Training camp has been a lot of fun to follow on Twitter so far for the Giants. I feel like every day there's a new player standing out, but you just mentioned it. There is a guy who's been standing out consistently every day, and I'm super excited to discuss him. I know exactly who you're talking about, but I'll let you introduce the topic. But I also do want to say Kayvon Thibodeau. I saw some people in the comment section yesterday saying, oh, I don't know, he's not really standing out. Is there any reason to worry? I was like, guys, it's the first 2 days of camp. Today, he was dominating. That's just how training camp is. Some days, some players don't have the best practices. It's practice at the end of the day. Today, Kayvon Thibodeau showed up, and everybody's super impressed with what he was able to do today in training camp. It was really exciting to see, and I think there's going to be a few more standouts, throughout the summer that we're going to be taking a look at. And keep in mind, preseason is just right around the corner, which I'm very excited for. I know the Giants also have a joint practice with the Jets coming up, I believe, so there's going to be a lot of fun little topics to discuss here during training camp, and I can't wait to see everything come to fruition for the New York Giants as we head our way into the regular season.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some good stuff before we dive into some bad stuff. But the good player, the one that everyone's been talking about lately, is Darnay Holmes. Darnay Holmes, a guy who we know pretty well from Brian Walker, who trains with him. He's his personal trainer, on the side. And I think that he's done some really, really great work on Darnay. So shout out to you, Brian Walker, for doing such a good job with him. He thinks that he could start on the outside. So I wonder if they were going to give him some reps out there. But he had a pick 6 today. He's had 3 straight practices with interceptions, a couple of them diving. He's really had Daniel Jones's number so far, and that's a really good sign for Darnay, who's probably locked into the starting nickel role right now. I think he's going to thrive in this Wink Martindale defense. It's very aggressive. The slot corners are asked to do a lot, especially blitz and do some stuff in man coverage and in the hybrid system, drop into some zone coverage. He made some big plays in the red zone. So Darnay so far has been extremely impressive. I'm so happy for him to see that he's really taking that step forward and locking down a starting job because, he's had some injury issues. He was a stud at UCLA, has had a hell of a story, a guy that Deion Sanders was like, this guy's going to be a stud. It's really a good sign that he's making this big developmental jump in year 3 and hopefully can turn into a really solid player for this Giants defense and lock it down in the slot. But Anthony, we're talking about Darnay. How exciting is it to see him developing really nicely here and having some good days of camp?
I'm thrilled, to be completely honest, because this is a guy that since he was drafted by the Giants, I've been super high on, and our expectations for him have only grown, and our bias for him has only grown as we've developed our relationship with Brian Walker, good friend of the podcast who trains Darnay Holmes. Love hearing his insight on all of the defensive backs that he trains, including Xavier Mckinney, formerly with Jabril Peppers, but he's always just spoken super highly of Darnay Holmes and has always said, this kid has limitless potential. This is the guy you want to focus on year after year. And finally, it looks like, 3 days of camp, and I understand it is practice, it is training camp, but the dude is dominating after 3 days of camp. He's baiting people in coverage. Maybe what he really needed was a Wink Martindale defensive scheme to unlock that next level of Darnay Holmes, and I'm really hoping that that is the case. I want to see this momentum continue into preseason and into the regular season. I'm hoping that there's no injury problems. I know Darnay's been banged up a few times in his short NFL career, but hopefully this year is the year that he stays fully healthy and gets that next level unlocked by Wink Martindale. And so far through training camp, like I said, it looks like that's going to be the case. He's been really reading Daniel Jones quite easily, It doesn't seem like Daniel Jones is having a terrible camp by any means. It just seems like Darnay Holmes is having a really good camp. But another thing that I want to bring up in this discussion is we were talking all, off season long about position battles, right? What battles are we going to be looking at when training camp rolls around? Left guard was one, linebacker 2 was one, and starting slot cornerback was a major one that we've been talking about all offseason long. And we discussed how there's multiple guys that could fit into that position. Darnay Holmes, Aaron Robinson, Cordell Flott, and anybody else, maybe even Dane Belton that you could think of. But Darnay Holmes seems to be running away with this position battle after 3 days of camp, which I'm super excited to see. He was my pick to win that position battle. And another thing that I'll say, you kind of just mentioned it, Aaron Robinson has not been making the most of his opportunities through 3 days of camp. It looks like he might just be falling into the back burner on this race for the starting slot cornerback position. And it seems like Darnay Holmes might be starting to run away with it. And you also mentioned Brian Walker has said to us before that the Giants should try him on the outside. I said that before he even played it down for the Giants because he did play outside cornerback at UCLA. It wasn't until he got to the Senior Bowl that he got some snaps at slot cornerback and started to impress people. So I've always thought that Darnay has an opportunity or should get an opportunity to play on the outside. But right now, he's playing so well in the slot, I don't even want to move him. Having a really good slot cornerback is super valuable. If you have an elite slot corner, it's just as good as having a good outside corner. So if he's playing this well in the slot, just keep him there. Let him run loose and just be a wild man over there at the slot cornerback position.
Yeah, and look, Aaron Robinson is a guy who is projected as our CB2 on the outside, but he's been a little too aggressive with his style the first couple of days of camp, especially without pads. But it's not a bad thing. I think it's more about just understanding the context of what they're trying to accomplish here. And receivers are going to have the upper hand when corners aren't allowed to really be physical. So that's something that I would kind of throw into the mix. The receivers should be winning these battles, especially 1v1 with no pass rush. Just a lot of easier opportunities for the receivers in this man coverage situations, and really no pressure on Daniel Jones. And he's still throwing interceptions, which I'm sure some people will bring up in the comments section nonetheless. But one guy who is kind of, I guess, not hurt, but came up a little slow yesterday, had some medical attention, was Jon Feliciano, center for this Giants team. So Feliciano yesterday essentially had heat stroke, right? I guess it was really hot, dehydrated, just kind of suffering a little bit through the heat, and they gave him a day off today. Had Jamal Douglas playing center, who really struggled. So if Feliciano doesn't actually end up, if he gets hurt or if anything happens to him, the Giants are kind of thin at center. So I wonder if they would consider bringing in another guy, or maybe Nick Gates makes a tremendous recovery and can help out there in the near future. But, what are your thoughts on Jon Feliciano, the kind of that backup center spot? Seems like there's not really much talent there. That is a bit of a concern for me.
It's definitely a concern for me as well. Everything that I'm reading is that Jamal Douglas had a pretty rough day at practice. I read that Dexter Lawrence had a dominant day at practice in turn. He was apparently in the backfield all day long, pressuring the quarterback, making tackles for loss. So I love to see that. But, Dexter Lawrence is beating up on lesser competition, right? And that's kind of like, oh, well, I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he's having a good day at practice. But I'm also getting concerned by the fact that Jamal Douglas is getting beat so consistently by Dexter Lawrence. So there is cause for concern at the backup center position. I don't really know if there is much of a battle there because I don't know who else could possibly fit into the fold there. I mean, maybe you try Joshua Ezeudu there. I don't really know if that's the best idea. I want to keep him at guard. You can maybe talk about Ben Bredesen. You can maybe talk about Max Garcia moving to center. But I don't know. Jamal Douglas was meant to be that backup center, and he's not really performing too well. I'll tell you, though, it is hot as a mother effer in this planet that we call Earth right now. It is super hot down here in Florida, particular. I walk out of my house and it feels like I walked into a sauna. It's so hard to breathe. It's disgusting. And I know it's pretty bad in New York too. I was just up there last week. So got to say, everyone needs to be careful in this heat. Jon Feliciano is the first one to be, taken by the heat and have to take a day off because of it. There's probably going to be a few more occurrences of that throughout training camp because it's just really hot outside, man. It's brutal out there, murder of the weather. So hopefully we don't have anybody get injured too badly from the heat. You can seriously injure yourself playing in this heat. So hopefully this doesn't become a recurring issue throughout training camp. But again, it does highlight how anything can happen to any player, right? You think you have a lock-in starter at any position, anything can happen. Nothing is guaranteed in the NFL. You can have any player go down with any injury, and that's why depth is super, super important. So the Giants are learning pretty early on in training camp that they might have an issue with depth at the center position, but I'd rather have them learn that now than during preseason when it's really late into the summer and it's a little bit more difficult to make a move and try some other players out at that position. So happy that they're finding this out now early on day 3 of camp, and maybe we can try to address the backup center position sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Another guy who really stood out today was Dexter Lawrence. He was in the backfield a lot and making some good plays as a pass rusher. Of course, he's a guy that we need to really hold it down in the run defense game, and he's been really solid as a pass rusher in training camp early. Of course, no pad, so it's hard to really tell what that will translate to come the regular season. But it's nice to see him taking a step forward. You know, he is a guy that we have big expectations for. He's a humongous human being. You shouldn't be able to move him off the line of scrimmage, and, you know, he has had some issues just maintaining his base and, you know, just kind of utilizing that hopeful pass rush and really getting those stats together the last couple of seasons. But I think that him at that weight, at that size, he's just been gassed. You know, I think that defense all last season was just gassed and out of breath. And after week 5, week 6, they're just on the field so much. Eventually, they're just going to run out of juice. And that fatigue catches up to you as the season progresses. So I think that this year, hopefully the offense can stay on the field a little bit more, help out the defense a lot in terms of, you know, just time of possession. And Dexter Lawrence can really exert maximum energy without having to be overwhelmed by fatigue. But, you know, what is your expectations for Dexter Lawrence? How nice is it to see that he's having a good camp so far?
Yeah, well, it's super important for Dexter Lawrence to have this good camp because, again, you take a look at the 2 first-round picks that are still with the Giants from the 2019 NFL Draft. Daniel Jones didn't get his 5th-year option picked up, but Dexter Lawrence did. Dexter Lawrence has proven to be a quality starter on a good rookie contract right now as an interior defensive lineman. He got his 5th-year option picked up, and I think that was the smart decision considering where the market is for interior defensive linemen. And it's kind of like his 5th-year option is picked up, but that doesn't mean that he's a long-term lock for the Giants. He still has to prove himself on this 5th-year option, in my opinion. I think he's been good, but he hasn't been first-round good necessarily. He hasn't been like this elite player who also contributes as a pass rusher that we expected him to be. I always thought Dexter Lawrence was going to really surprise people as a pass rusher. And granted, he's done some things as a pass rusher. He's been good, maybe a little bit above average as a pass rusher, but has he really maximized his value as an interior defensive lineman through the pass rush? That's debatable. And there are games where I feel like Dexter Lawrence kind of falters and falls behind and almost disappears at times. So I do think this is a crucial year for him coming up. I think this is huge, this 4th season in the NFL. And I'm excited to see what he's able to do here with the Giants. And maybe he can play his way into a big long-term extension with a contract. And I really hope so because I like Dexter Lawrence. You mentioned it, massive human being, a really great character. I like when he dances after the sacks. I think he's just got really good energy to him. And any interview that you watch of him, he's just really fun to listen to. He's a cool guy. He's a cool guy. I like Dexter Lawrence. So I'm really rooting hard for Dexter Lawrence and hoping to see him have that breakout season.
Yeah, you know, another guy I want to have a breakout season is Kadarius Toney, and he's been making his presence felt, you know, at camp. And today, you know, he said some really good things, especially I know yesterday I tweeted out that they were playing Kadarius Toney's music over the loudspeakers, and people seemed to really vibe with that. And I thought it was a great sign of respect from Brian Daboll toward Toney, and just showing him that, like, I appreciate your music. I appreciate the efforts of the things you do off the field, trying to build that relationship and using his music as a catalyst for relationship growth on the football field is a freaking genius move from Brian Daboll. You know, that is like genius relationship building. That is an aspect of coaching and player relationships that, you know, kind of gets slid under the table sometimes. You don't always see that, you know, what's happening. That little sign of respect went a long way because Toney said today, he can't wait to show what he can do this year. He didn't know coach was going to play his music at practice. He said it was really cool for him to do that.
Do you have any more Young Joker songs to play during warm-ups?
Could be. Yeah, could be. We play a bunch of music, and it was one of the songs. You know, he'd send me songs here and there throughout the off season. I'd ask him for some songs, and you know, some I'd like better than others, and you know, talented guy.
And the smile he had on his face when he was talking about it, I haven't seen Kadarius Toney smile like that ever, right? I mean, it's only been a year, but I haven't seen him smile like that ever. And he wants to play for Daboll. You know, a lot of these guys do. I think that it's really, really special to have a coach that has such good relationships with guys. I don't know if that's going to translate to wins. It's obviously we're going to see. We have to wait and see if that's actually a catalyst for it. But that little sign of respect to Toney, I think, reinvigorated him and really reeled him back into the football field. So it is exciting stuff. It's very nice to see that he's back and he seems committed, and he was dealing with some personal issues while all those trade rumors were going around, which seemed to be bullshit at this point in time. Essentially, he was like, I had personal stuff going on. That's why I couldn't make it to voluntary practices. So, I'm not really holding that against him. I don't think anyone is anymore. The people that were going crazy about him being a red flag and this and that, it doesn't seem to be an issue to me. It never really did. In fact, we were pretty adamant about keeping it, kind of by the wayside. Anthony and I were stout in saying that we don't think this is a big deal. We think the trade rumors are bullshit, and they ended up being bullshit. So give ourselves a little pat on the shoulder for that one. A lot of people have had similar ideas to us. So hopefully, you guys have some respect for that opinion as well. So, good job to anyone that thought similarly. But Tony is definitely an interesting player. He has the ability to be that wide receiver one. We may actually have the first successful rapper and receiver in the NFL ever, which could be pretty fun. But what are your thoughts on Kadarius Toney, that little bit of respect that Dable showed him with the music, and just kind of where he's going in the progression he's had so far in camp?
So there's a few takeaways that I have from Brian Dable playing Kadarius Toney's music at camp. And the first one is, you said it, those trade rumors were bullshit. I always knew that they were bullshit. I always saw, these stupid tweets from these guys who claim to be such NFL insiders. Oh, I have sources. Shut up. No, you don't. The Giants don't give a shit what Kadarius Toney does in his free time, okay? If he wants to rap and he wants to get things off of his mind through rapping, there's no freaking problem with that. You know what, dude? All those rumors, they were like, oh, the Giants have character concerns. They have some questions about Kadarius Toney and if he's committed to football. Shut up. No, they don't. This dude's a freaking baller. I know I'm biased because his name is Tony and my name is Tony, so I got a little soft spot for him, and he's a receiver. It's my favorite position to watch. I love everything that he brings to the game. Kadarius Toney is quickly becoming my favorite player on the Giants. Him, Xavier McKinney, it's a little bit of a toss-up there, but let me just tell you, I think that what Brian Dable is doing here is great. I think his message is really resonating with the players, and I think that his coaching style is really resonating with the players. I think the players are really gathering behind him, and they're really buying into the culture that Brian Dable and Joe Schoen are kind of building here. I saw Jihad Ward was yelling, Tom Cruise to Joe Schoen as he was walking on the practice field. He was wearing, some sunglasses, and he looked cool. He's a young guy, right? You can't yell Tom Cruise to the dinosaur that was Dave Gettleman, right? He's just an old man. It's like grandpa, great grandpa even. So it's kind of cool.
Great grandpa. Disrespect is unbelievable.
Hey, man, the way he disrespected the Giants for a few years, I think it's warranted.
Deserving.
But absolutely. So I don't know. You take a look at the team. It's just younger. It's more modern. It's more progressive. It's cooler. I think the Giants are a cooler team now. Something that we could root for, just be happy about. We're young guys. This is a young podcast, 25, 21, right? So we like young guys. We like seeing guys that we can relate to, and we're seeing that with Kadarius Toney. I know people that wish to be SoundCloud rappers like Kadarius Toney and think that they're all that, and they love to rap, and I think it's cool, man. Just express yourself. Be your own person. And the Giants are really supporting that for Kadarius Toney. And I think that's awesome. And I think this was a really great show of respect to play his music during practice and just kind of hype the team up with a player's music. And I agree. I think that we might actually be the first team to have success with a receiver rapper combo. I think that's going to be really awesome. I'm really hoping, dude, we go to a game this season and we go on Sunday to MetLife Stadium. We're drinking some beers, and all of a sudden, we just hear Young Joker's music playing all throughout the stadium. How cool would that be? Hearing Kadarius
Christmas
Toney
morning
rap
stuff, bro.
on the loudspeakers.
Santa flies in. What a moment.
I would love it, dude. I would love it. But yeah, man, again, the vibes with the Giants right now, I'm vibing with the Giants, man. I think it's awesome. I love what Brian Dable is doing, Joe Schoen, and I'm super excited to see that breakout season from Kadarius Toney because I know it's coming.
Yeah, and speaking of receivers, one thing he did say that was really, really enticing, and Darius Slayton kind of mimicked this, is that they're giving the receivers a lot more freedom with their routes and allowing them to be creative and do things that maybe Jason Garrett wouldn't let them do instead of just kind of force-fitting specific routes on them and not letting them get creative and do things and kind of build that chemistry further with Daniel Jones in the quarterback position. They're now able to kind of see like what is happening and react and have options. Like some option routes built into the system. And I think that's going to be big for Daniel Jones and taking his development to the next level. Like you look at Josh Allen, you look at, Patrick Mahomes, those guys have a ton of option routes built into the system so they can just like the receivers have a little bit of creativity and leeway. You have to have good blocking for that. So we'll see if that holds up. But another thing is Xavier McKinney's been having a standout camp as well. They're actually giving him the ability to call plays, which is really interesting because usually that's the middle linebacker's job, the Mike linebacker. But he's had the green dot on his helmet indicating that he's the one actually relaying the plays to the defense. They want him to be more vocal. They want him to be more of a leader on this team. And they think highly of him, clearly. So I thought that was a really good point to kind of bring up, that McKinney. And also he met with Eric Weddle. Wink Martindale hooked him up with Eric Weddle, who's one of the best safeties in the past 10 years, and just gave him some good ideas on how to disguise coverages and things that he can do to get even better. You know, McKinney is on a top 10 safety season right now. I think he's going to end up becoming a top 5 after this year. I'm really excited to see his growth, see how he kind of takes ownership of the leadership role on this defensive side, Anthony. What are your thoughts on X?
Dude, you know my thoughts on X. I love Xavier McKinney. Again, like I said, Kadarius Toney, Xavier McKinney, those are my 2 favorites right now. I love these young players that just have a lot of talent coming from the SEC. Both really great players right there. But when you're taking a look at Xavier McKinney getting that green dot on his helmet, I think it's important for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's a young player. He's in his 3rd season, and he's already that level of a leader, and he's already that level of a talent where the Giants are trusting him to have the green dot on his helmet. Another thing that it shows me is that Wink Martindale's defense is going to rely heavily on the safety position. The safeties are going to be asked to do a lot, particularly Xavier McKinney, and he's got the talent to do it, so I'm excited for that. But another reason why I think it's very important that Xavier McKinney's practicing with the green dot is because Blake Martinez is coming off of a significant injury, right? He did tear his ACL last season very early on in the year. I think he's healthy right now. I think he's practicing. He should be good to go for the start of the season, but you never know, right? You just want to make sure that you have somebody else who's used to calling the plays and has the ability to call the plays and is comfortable doing it. And I think that Xavier McKinney, kind of working his way up to getting that captain's patch, hopefully, I think that he's the perfect candidate. You know, Blake Martinez is the middle linebacker. He's probably going to be calling most of the plays throughout the season, but it doesn't hurt to have another leader on the defense that can do it as well, and especially to have someone do it from a different positional standpoint. It's a different perspective, right? And I think that also adds another layer to the whole thing. So again, Blake Martinez, hoping to see him fully healthy this year and see him be a leader of the defense like he has been for the last couple of years. But Xavier McKinney is really elevating himself into that leadership role and really elevating his game to a higher performance level. So super excited to see what Xavier McKinney has in store for this season. I think this is that big breakout year. I know he had a breakout last season. I think this is going to be a big breakout year. I do think he's going to solidify himself as a top 15 to 10 safety in the NFL and hopefully make the Pro Bowl and hopefully make an all-pro team. I think that would be spectacular.
Absolutely. But guys, this kind of wraps up today's episode, day 3 of training camp. A lot of great stuff. We're so happy to be providing relevant and awesome information. Now, Daniel Jones did struggle, but they have a chance tomorrow to come back and, return the favor and hopefully put some better strings together. And he had some nice throws. Honestly, Tyrod Taylor's looked really good, apparently. So I wonder if he's competing with Daniel Jones at this point. Who knows? I mean, I imagine they want to roll with Daniel. He's the cemented starter. But if Tyrod Taylor keeps playing this well, he's had some amazing deep balls and some great throws. I mean, who's to say he doesn't take that job? It would definitely surprise me, but anything's possible.
I'll tell you, you referred to Daniel Jones as a cemented starter, but I've seen cracks in cement before. I've seen cement get torn up, right? So it's always possible. Don't rule out the possibility of Tyrod Taylor taking over. But one thing that I will say to kind of support Daniel Jones a little bit, Brian Dable said that today's practice was focusing on 3rd and long situations. And that's always difficult for any quarterback to try and convert a 3rd and 10, a 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15 even. So that did make things harder for Daniel Jones today. So do keep that in mind as well. It wasn't the best practice. It might have been a little ugly, might have thrown some interceptions, but he was also forced to take a lot of chances on 3rd and long scenarios. So I think this was an important practice day for the Giants, for Daniel Jones specifically, to try and work through some 3rd and longs. But hopefully in Brian Dable's new offense, we don't face too many 3rd and longs in the regular season. That's the hope, right? You want to make sure that the Giants aren't facing too many 3rd and long situations and things are easier for Daniel Jones, but it's good to practice the hard stuff now.
It's absolutely true. That's a very good point to make. But guys, hope you enjoyed this episode of Fireside Giants. As always, got you guys covered with all the relevant news, updates, and everything else with this New York Giants football team. Very excited about the coming weeks and days here. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. We'll catch you guys on day 4 of training camp tomorrow.
TVSO.